And so I'm Sahil, and I'm here to teach you how to make the best cocktails for your parties. I'm kidding. We'll do that in the after party. So today I'm going to talk about the future of F&B, the future of the restaurant industry as I see it. And my pitch is that it lies in the tier 2 market in India. So let me take you back to 2020, right? The COVID year, the entire restaurant industry, the entire F&B space stood decimated. The only people who survived, the big brands, the survivors, they were back to being fresh ventures, new companies. And I, who had been an operator and investor in the space since 2008, was at crossroads again of where would the next bet be? What would we do next? Will we ever recover? So as we were all doing at that time, I started making Zoom calls. Nobody really had an answer. There was only uncertainty. But there was this strong belief of a comeback. But nobody knew from where. So the next best thing, I went on a road trip from Guwahati to Bangalore, from Patiala to Pune. I did it all. And I came up with a long list of ideas I could execute. Would it be a speakeasy bar in Bangalore? Would it be a sushi restaurant in Mumbai? Or would it be a brewery in Gurgaon? And then I found myself on the 13th floor of an under construction building in Lucknow. And somehow I knew it. I saw this vast, widespread city. And I thought to myself, this is it. This is where I needed to be. And this is where I will build something special. And thus happened Boombox Lucknow. And Lucknow wasn't a cool city or a sexy place for a nice bar or a club to come up. It was, on the contrary, people were always questioning me. And jump to 2025, in less than 50 months, we've done 50 crores of business. Thank you. We've served over 3 lakh customers, over 2 lakh LITs, it really works, and over 1 lakh pizzas. And so that is where I felt the true inspiration lied. And we're on track to almost reach 100 crores maybe by the time the lease ends. And I've spent the last 5 years building restaurant brands in tier 2 markets. And this is where I pitch that the future of the restaurant industry, the next wave of talent, growth, ambition is going to come from tier 2 markets. And this is where profits and sustainability and stability will come from. But who am I to talk about this, right? What drives my audacity to make these tall claims? So first of all, I'm an MBA from INSEAD, as we just talked about, but I don't talk about INSEAD to name drop the school's brand, but to actually tell people that I had a very low GMAT score, and I was a college dropout for real. So getting into INSEAD is like street cred. I really earned it. And I've always kind of taken pride in being a seeker and a creator, and being always able to predict what's on trend, what's the next best thing. And it all started with my journey with my first venture, which was a media production company back in Los Angeles in the pre-YouTube era, which is pre-2005. It was called Chai TV, and we were bridging the gap between Hollywood and Bollywood. And I did it before Priyanka Chopra, so she needs to thank me. And then I ended up opening a restaurant in downtown Toronto, a modern Indian progressive restaurant. And I'm still trying to patent my inventions, which are the saffron tequila and tandoori turkey. I came back to India post-INSEAD, and I started a fund called Now Capital, through which we invested and built many, many brands in the F&B space. We brought Carl's Jr. from the US here, which is one of the largest burger chains. We roped in Kareena Kapoor to market our diet burgers. We had Yuvraj Singh as a co-investor. And then next, I got India addicted to sugary pancakes through International House of Pancake, another American large casual diner chain. And before all the specialty coffee brands reached Coorg, we took Coorg to the highways of Punjab. We built a brand called Roadies Coffee House, which is in collaboration with MTV Roadies. And we spread from Mohali to Chandigarh, Ludhiana, Patiala, Navi Mumbai, Surat, and many, many more. And my deepest love, Boombox. Boombox is a brand we started in 2010 or 11 out of Delhi, and it then moved on to Haryana, Punjab, and then of course to Lucknow, and now even Gorakhpur. So, but when I make this case for tier 2 markets, I do not imply that tier 1 is dead, but not by a far measure. In fact, there's no dearth of great restaurants and bars, as we all know, in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. But what's happened is, in fact, in tier 1 markets, you can actually do a lot more revenue because you can have a lot more population density, a lot more understanding, and a more discerning but a very adaptive crowd. But with great revenue comes great responsibility. And the responsibility is to make profits, which we often tend to forget these days. So, but why is tier 1 not making profits? Why do we see headlines like these? It's because from an insider's point of view, what happened is The landlords saw the restaurants doing very high numbers, and they started benchmarking their rentals, not by the standard market rate, but by what the revenue share could be. So they started pegging into a variable rental. So which then caused people who had fixed rentals also peg and benchmark their rentals with a variable high payout. This was done so that they could take the rental yield and convert their property values to go much higher. Now, the EBITDA margins for the restaurateurs dwindled from 15 to 18% down to single digits. And on top of that, now the restaurateurs weren't able to survive very well. They started emulating the only ones who were actually doing well. So now, as you may see, everybody looks the same. They all have two-syllable names. They have similar menus. So it all kind of came down into a big crash. And the only way forward for Tier 1 now is to either go deep as a niche focus or expand into Tier 2, which brings us back to Lucknow. So what was happening in Lucknow in the 2020-2021 era? The government had cleaned up the crime, as we've all heard. There was massive investment in infrastructure in UP. So people were generally they felt safe, they felt happy. That's a good time to be in a city. There was a lot of MNCs had opened their regional offices back there, so it stopped the brain drain from UP to Delhi. And in fact, many smaller towns were now, the youth was shifting to Lucknow. With rising economy, obviously people were earning more, they were spending more. And with spending more, they were not just spending on what they were used to, but also demanding more Tier 1 experiences, more global experiences. And trust me, it was happening. There were at one point almost 5 sushi restaurants in Lucknow. It was that crazy. And with larger infrastructure, with malls coming up, with offices, high towers, what developers realized is they need F&B to pull in the crowds. So it was a perfect time, the perfect storm to kind of start something. So, but how did we crack this market? How did we make this venture successful? So I'll share a few pointers of how we did it. The first thing was CapEx and what I call Banya controls. I'm a flamboyant Punjabi spender, but I've spent enough time with my Banya friends and mentors who've taught me how to invest wisely. So we invested only what we could get back in 24 months. We knew that we had to pick the perfect size. We picked the 3,000 square feet, 100-seater only. Now this smaller size not only helped us put our limit our initial CapEx outflow, but also be always on trend because we were always full. We were small, so we were always full and busy. Positioning. So positioning is a big key of how you enter a market, and we took inspiration from the fashion world. We realized we wanted to be a bridge to luxury brand, not quite lower end, not quite luxury. And when we were entering the market, we had to make sure that people felt safe. They didn't feel judged by coming to a drinking place. And they still looked up to us as an aspirational brand, as a trendy brand, but yet affordable brand. So we made sure our interiors weren't overtly luxurious. Everything was very accessible. Things were very brightly lit. And we only transitioned into a nightlife bar or a dance floor much later in the evening. Pricing, what I call our deep seek surprise. So when we were entering the market, we weren't sure if the customer in Lucknow would understand the pricing which is based on not just product, but experience. And we didn't have access to big data, big reports. We didn't have the money to go out undertake a consumer behavior report. So we developed our own little software called the Boombox Bar Exchange, which actually had real-time changes in pricing as per real-time supply and demand. So this kind of really surprised the local audience, and it also surprised the incumbent players. And what we ended up doing is build a menu within 2 months by kind of positioning products that truly had value for people, the price that they wanted to pay. And interesting fact, what we learned, the two things which had very, very inelastic demand were Red Bull and LIT. No matter what the price, the demand never goes down. And of course, the most important factor was building a team. When we entered Lucknow, we were still a new company in a new city. And the top talent of that city, like any Tier 2 city, often had migrated to the big leagues in Delhi. And there was a dearth of trained chefs, trained managers, trained servers, trained bartenders. So we built our own IPL team called the Boombox Nawab's 11th. But of course, not for cricket, but for our own restaurant. We got an industry veteran coach from Delhi. We got 3 players from Tier 1 markets, our international players, and then a lot of youngsters from the local talent pool. And then we invested very heavily on technology, on training. We made sure we let them make their mistakes. We kept faith in them. And slowly we learned that while we instilled a focus not just on English, but deep trade knowledge and deep skill sets, people really started to love us more. And although many employees after training used the training to get much more higher paying jobs elsewhere. We connected with the employee base at large and gained very, very deep loyalty and endless employee referrals. We still have never had a problem hiring. So I think, and lastly, what we also did, as the space was evolving so quickly, when you enter a market and you see it grow, like in India in general, that we see things change so quickly, we wanted to make sure that we don't get left behind. And although we held on to our initial success, things were changing so rapidly, new brands were coming in all the time. So we held on to our core values and then decided to grow with our customers. So while in 2021 we had started just like being an all-day diner and a cafe, by 2022 we were focused more on nightlife and cocktails. By 2024 we were pretty much a dancing, partying nightclub, but which is what our customers saw best in us, and it's not what we wanted to impose on people. Very much what the Bollywood scene is going on. But no matter how many successes we had while building roadies and boombox across so many cities, we did make a lot of mistakes. And there were definitely a lot of traps that I feel people could avoid. And I would like to share a few. So number one, when you're picking your tier 2 market, make sure the distance of your city from a bigger market cannot be covered during the playtime of one Diljit album. And I tell you this, I'll tell you why. Because we opened a roadies coffee house and a boombox in Patiala, where our typical consumer, a typical customer got into his Thar and played Diljit and could easily get to Chandigarh in less than an hour with that Patiala Pek energy. So that of course is always, we realized those cities are better off while you open something which is more utility focused and not an experiential focused brand. Another thing, India is a very diverse space. From the moment I've come to this college, we've already met people from 7 or 8 different states. And we must respect this cultural difference and also embrace it for our growth. Don't be a Punjabi just because you know how to say changa, and just don't think of yourself as a Gujarati because you can ask somebody Kem Cho, right? And don't go into Bangalore talking about Bangalore food just by going to Rameshwaram Cafe. Have your local friends take you to Mahalakshmi Bakery and Warrior Bakery, right? So you must respect that. And this is a hard lesson I learned when we opened Boombox in Gorakhpur. Gorakhpur is a very small population. Everybody knew everybody. And my emails of as per the minutes of the meeting and as discussed earlier and mutually agreed upon never worked. It's a small city. You needed to meet, greet and host, hug them, take them out to dinner to get things done. Another thing, we as Indians, we had this hangover of thinking we're the biggest market in the world, right? We are 1.4 billion people, but not all 1.4 billion people want your Arabica, mocha frappuccino with strawberries, whipped cream and almond milk, right? Not all of them do. And this is a hard lesson we learned, the difference between the total market and the addressable market. When we went to Ahmedabad and we were trying to open a roadies coffee house on a boat on the Sabarmati River. Now, it sounds like an amazing idea in Ahmedabad, but you only realize the only addressable market there are the tourists and the people who come there for jogging. So clearly not frappuccino drinkers. And my favorite, the chutney conundrum is what I call it. So you know why Michelin stars don't come to India? So it's because as Indians, we don't go by the number of stars, but by the number of free chutneys we get with our meal. I'm kidding. It's the number of chutneys and the free onions we get with our meals, right? No, I'm kidding. It's to say that, as Indians, we are a very demanding populace. We want maximum value, maximum discount all the time. But there are subtle differences throughout the country as you travel. So when we opened in Chandigarh, people were willing to pay a very high price for a dish if the portion sizes were larger, if they could justify that quantity works. While when you go to Navi Mumbai, people would definitely pay a good price, but the quality has to be very superior. But they did prefer the discounts. And these are kind of differences you have to catch up to make sure you launch right. Lastly, there's something that I call the bigger I build, the more they will come. We feel when we enter tier 2 markets, and we talked about rentals early on, that since rentals are cheap, I can build a large space and then it'll be this palatial temple that people will come to. But that's not what happens. We opened Roadies Coffee House in Surat as a 10,000 square feet coffee shop. We even did the whole coffee rave with Nikhil Chanappa. We did a techno house party to launch. But a 10,000 square feet is not a coffee shop. It turns into a restaurant, it turns to something much bigger, the business economics change, and you end up really deviating from your business model. So, apart from that, I think no matter how many success strategies you deploy, how many traps you avoid, how many TEDx talks you listen to, one most critical piece of the puzzle is timing. And this is what I learned from our last venture, which is Chica Loca, a bar and restaurant in partnership with Sunny Leone. And we chose to launch in Noida on the Noida Expressway. Now, Noida is a suburb of Delhi, not drivable in one Diljit album time because of Delhi traffic. But we had to kind of time ourselves. If we had entered too early, there was nothing for miles and miles around us. There's a new airport coming around Noida. There are new real estate developers who offer better provisions for corporates. There's more luxury, affordable housing that's coming for young couples. But it could kind of change within a few months. So luckily, we got the timing right when we entered. We just recently celebrated a one-year success. And just now, a slew of brands have come in. And anybody who would enter now would have higher rentals, a very different supply and demand economic structure, and very, very hard to get the market share. So timing is everything. And with our success in Noida, we're now moving to Raipur, Indore, and even underserved markets like Vizag and Chennai. So as a parting thought, I would like to encourage all entrepreneurs, especially food entrepreneurs, to go observe, enjoy this vast, rich diversity of tier 2 cities that we have in our country. And let's vow to chase profits and not the badges of high revenue and high funding. And remember, return on investment is a lot greater than return on your ego. Thank you.